Hey guys, we're back with the notes for graphing transformations. That's 3.6. So what I'd like to do is pause the screen and have you write down everything that you see. I'm going to zoom out for just a second. If you would go ahead and write down everything you see. Perfect. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Here's what's going on. Transformations means change, right? So on these problems, we're saying we have a parent function. Think about that like the OG, right? He's the original graph, if you will. That function has a 1 for the slope, just 1x, and it has a 0 for its y-intercept. So it is starting out at the origin, and it has a perfect rise 1, run 1 slope. We call that the parent function equation and the parent graph. Everything else that we've been doing is a transformation of that. It's a change from that. We've been taking our m to control the steepness, so control how the graph is moving, and we've been taking our b and telling you where to begin. So if I talk through these, my transformation code, they might have different letters, but they're still the same thing. Transformation code D is the same as our y-intercept, okay? It controls where I start my graph. So notice that if I have the same slope, rise 1, run 1, but I begin at 3 this time, how is it changing my graph? Well, it took the original graph, the parent function, and it moved it up to start at 3. So what that does is it shifts my whole graph up 3 spaces. So on this problem, how would we explain it? We'd say it's a shift up 3. That's all that changed. It didn't change the slope. It didn't change directions. All it did was move up 3 spaces, okay? Notice that if I make that b a negative though, if I moved it -4, now look what happens. I take the original graph and I move it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. I begin at -4, and that means that I'm shifting it down. So anytime I subtract a number after the x, that's going to shift me down how many spots? So this one will be shifting down 4 spaces, okay? All right, so B controls how far up and down we shift the graph. Let's take a look at what M controls. Hopefully you have these 3 graphs now. If I have a negative in front of my x, what that does is it takes my slope, and instead of going uphill, now my graph is changing to downhill. So what happened with my graph? Well, we say that it reflected, let me write that down here. We say that it reflected over the x-axis. I like to show this by kind of taking a real bold marker and showing you that it flipped upside down. So again, anytime you have a negative for your slope, doesn't matter what the number is, it only matters if you have a negative for slope. We say that it reflects over the x-axis, okay? All right, for that second one, I did not change my beginning point, okay? I did not change my beginning point. If I say, here's my original, all I did was take my graph and make it a little bit steeper, okay? Again, all I did was take the graph and make it steeper. I didn't change where I started, but I changed how I'm moving. Okay, this one, we would say that it is 2 times steeper. Basically, it's going up twice as fast. So it doesn't matter if my graph had, let me move down here. It doesn't matter if my graph had 3/2. It doesn't matter if it had a 5 or a 7/3. All of these are bigger than 1. Any number that is bigger than 1 is going to make my graph steeper. So that's what I'm going to put. For A is bigger than 1, it makes the graph steeper. Okay? Well, that means that if I have a number smaller than 1, what's it going to do? Well, it's going to take the original and it's going to flatten it out just a little bit. It's going to make my graph less steep. So on this problem, it's less steep. I'd say it's half as steep as the other one, okay? So on these problems, it doesn't matter if it's a 1/2 or a 3/4 or a 2 out of 10, let's say 2 out of 7. Doesn't matter what it is as long as it's smaller than 1. I don't care if it's negative, okay? It might be reflected and less steep. Might be reflected and steeper. It doesn't matter. The negative is separate, but if the number is smaller than 1 like a fraction, we say it is less steep. Okay? So one more time, just to review, you're going to be working on page 95 and 96. They are all multiple choice. What I want you to hear me say is that the M controls the steepness, and the B controls the up and down. Okay? All right, you are free to go ahead and get started on 3.6 practice. If you have any questions, come see me.